Hello there, fellow zombies. Josh here with the Zombie Cure. So, this is video 2 of the office gossip and, backstabbing segment. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to remedy it, things to help slow it down. I'm going to be honest, in these cases, there's not much you can do. Once you're already the victim, you tend to stay the victim, and it's very hard to get rid of. It's a unfortunate cancer in the office environment today, and unfortunately, it is also the reason why the Great Resignation is happening. It's one of the several reasons that people would rather just work remotely, is because dealing with other people is not the easiest thing to do. So, let's say you found out that you are, whether somebody comes and tells you or whether you find out through micro inequities, that you found out that you are now the victim of the back talk and gossip in the office. Now, I mentioned micro inequities. That's actually an identification method I use to discover how people are thinking about me, or how that current situation is affecting them. I'm not going to get into that in this video, into micro inequities, but definitely Google it, because that's a good way to first identify how people feel about you, or if you're a bother, or just a micro inequity. It's exactly what it says. However, it was coined by Mary Rowe, I believe, in 1973. Who actually coined that phrase. Definitely Google it. It's very interesting stuff, and it's a very powerful tool to have on your tool belt. So you've identified it. So as you know, that there is an instigator and there is a accomplice when it comes to people talking behind the back. Best thing to do is pull them aside, both of them, and say, hey, I know what's going on. I know I might be making mistakes. You always want to try to admit fault. That's kind of like food for them. And then, what can I do to improve the situation? What can I do better? If I'm making mistakes, can you guys come and talk to me about it? If that doesn't work, you might talk to your HR. I know a lot of this stuff sounds kind of cliche. However, if it's over 4 or 5 people doing this behind your back and talking, you've identified that's actually a group of people, the best remedy is to actually update your resume and cut bait, because when it gets to that size, it probably means HR is not doing their job well enough to keep that kind of thing under control. So it's probably not a company or a group of people you want to work with in the first place. The other remedy is this is a little trick that I learned from a guy, if you YouTube him, it's called Beau in the Fifth Column. I definitely highly recommend watching his videos. He does more stuff on the political side than I do, but he did do a video on a little trick, and it actually works because I tested it out in this case. What you do is when somebody comes up and starts talking bad about somebody else, and oh, this person did this, you can look at them and you can say, I don't understand. And then they're going to look at you like, what don't you understand? Well, tell me again what you're saying. And then of course they're going to do it again, and you just go, well, I just don't understand. I don't get it. And of course they're going to be confused, and what you're doing is you're giving them a situation that they're going to remember. So I call it the third strike, you're out. They're going to try to tell you again, I don't understand. And then they're going to go, well, what don't you understand? And I'm like, what in the world does this have to do with me? At that point, they're going to have an aha moment. They're going to have a moment of, oh, this is not good. They caught me. They caught me in the act of doing something bad. And usually they're going to remember that, and the chances of them doing that to you again is going to be very slim. But however, you probably up your chances of them talking behind your back, because they're going to tell somebody else that story. Another little story that I'm going to go to, this is something that I wouldn't try. This is probably a more advanced move, me combining micro inequities and simple using my brain and process of elimination, I figured out how to debrain a situation that actually occurred not too long ago. I am sitting in the office, minding my own business, doing my work. Now, I don't have many people that dislike me, but it doesn't mean they're not going to try. I was working on a spreadsheet, and I do know that there's only 4 people who know how to do the spreadsheet. There's me, and in this case, the instigator and the accomplice, and another person that's brand new. So I'm not going to even count that person. So there's actually only 3. So I was working on this spreadsheet, and the instigator gets up and goes to the accomplice and starts pointing out a mistake. And of course, the instigator will never tattle on themselves. That's just something you need to know about. They're never going to make themselves drop. So already I knew they were talking about a mistake that I had made, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with making mistakes. I'm fine with taking accountability for it. So after they got done talking, I gave them a couple of minutes to make sure they weren't going to call me over to include me on my own mistake. They didn't, so I know that that was the beginnings of a situation where backtalk would probably ensue once I leave my desk. So I looked up and I said to the accomplice, which it happens to be the manager, usually the accomplice is. So I heard you guys talking about something on the spreadsheet. Well, what happened was, at that moment, they knew that I knew they were talking about me. So she says, well, come over here and look at this. So I do. I come over there and look at this. She shows me what's wrong on the spreadsheet. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. First step number 1, always admit accountability, whether you were accountable or not. Like I said, this is food and positive fodder that will help them gain trust. So even though, yes, I did actually make that mistake, I took accountability for it. And the first thing I asked, this is where the advanced part comes in, is why didn't you tell me about this in the first place? And the first thing she says, well, it was just brought to my attention. I'm like, oh, okay. So I asked her a few more questions about it, just to spread the gap a little bit. And then the next thing I asked her, so have you seen any more of these? And she's like, well, yeah, and she continues to show me, and I was like, well, these were done mostly by me, right? And she goes, well, yeah, you're the one that's been doing most of these. There's a couple that she was doing, but you're mostly the guilty one here. And I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you that question again. How come you didn't tell me when you first noticed the problem? I mean, you did scroll up and down and show me specific examples, so you do know that this has been going on. And then while I was saying this, I was looking over at the instigator, knowing that, hey, I caught you. And then that actually made her go, oh yeah, well, that's something I do too. So I did make her drop, and I did make her realize that, hey, you do this too, and maybe next time you might try telling me next time that I did make that mistake, rather than bring it up right in front of me and act like I'm not involved. Now, I didn't word it to her like that. I was very professional about it. So what I did is I called her out without actually accusing her. And that actually worked, because now when that same mistake comes up or something similar comes up, they come to me first. Now, that's a little bit more advanced. You could run into some problems doing it that way, so I would practice with your micro inequities and just basic communication skills before you try something that actually corners them into realizing what they just did was not a good thing. Once you get some practice at doing that, it's a lot easier to spot, but again, that could also backfire on you, and you just need to be careful. But anyways, I thought I would just share kind of a little bit of a story and just a little bit of quick remedies that you can do to solve that problem. But anyways, I appreciate you watching, and it's just an observation.